Wow. Thank you very much. Thank you very, very much. Man, what a world we have out there today, you know? I mean, this week I was talking to Bruce Kling, and he's our NAVUR guy, you know, and he's, hey, the Russians again, and I'm thinking, wow, that's way behind us, and he's saying, no, no, no. So there's an initiative, and then we got China. I'm going to China Sunday to try and kind of sit down and talk about how we're going to behave. All the chiefs are going to get together, the Western Pacific chiefs. Harry Harris is coming. And I'm thinking, is Keating here? Yeah, Tim here? Yeah. Three Paycoms ago, this place went to hell out there. And then Stavridis says, not a problem, I'm retired now, I'm leaving. And look, the Russians are taking over. This is a mess. So I had lunch with Gary Ruffhead. I punched him in the nose today. Because I got no money. And if you talk to Jim Amos, he'll say Conway had it in the good days. But thank you very much. Secretary England, you here?
Yes.
Oh, sorry, sir, right there in front of you. Don't hide, right? It's great to see you, sir. I think General Allen's here, John Allen. And well, he was going to be good. Admiral Meese.
Right here.
All right, great, Rich. It's good to see you here. But anyway, what I want to talk about today, a little bit about the Naval Institute and what it does for me, and what I'm going to ask you to kind of help us do and continue doing. A little bit about innovation and really a topic called interdependence, which Marty Dempsey and I, we the chiefs, we talk about this now and again. And it's a little bit kind of like taking joint to the next level, but I hopefully you understand what I mean here. But what the Naval Institute, to me, the proceedings and all that it does, the magazine and all that you do, has been an indispensable forum during my tenure for sure. I read it every now and again. I used it every now and again. But as a service chief, as this service chief, from the time I kind of came in, we wrote things down and said, look, we got to have to lay things out. I can print 100 nice and glossies, and everybody will put them on their coffee table, and that's about it. But we've laid it out in there and used the proceedings in this forum, both your websites and otherwise, to great extent. And to me, it's like an all-hands call. It's been our conscience. We get great feedback, and for that, I thank you all very much. It's been our way to generate ideas and find organizational blind spots out there, and we depend upon the diversity of thought that this institution brings, and it's not only that we tolerate it, because not everything is fun and all that, but it gives us a great opportunity to lay things out. And I think our services, the naval services, the sea services, all three, are known to lay things out and have that debate, and it's carried out. And so you are a great, great enabler of that. It's been in your history. 1883, Commodore Luce authored War Schools, an article he laid out there where he advocated for higher education. And the result was our Naval War College, which is something that some of you may see. I'm starting to move a little bit in a different direction up there, and I want to continue doing that. I just interviewed a new president that you'll find out someday, and it's going to be a little bit different from the way we've done it before. Not a whole lot. You don't move things like that in great speed, but we'll move along there. 1912, Admiral Nimitz wrote, then Lieutenant Nimitz, The Military Value and the Tactics of Modern Submarines. A few years later, not that much later, he found just how real that might have been when right after Pearl Harbor, he used the submarine force in ways we didn't think we would. So Mahan, Teddy Roosevelt, Sims, of course Arleigh Burke and others have used the Naval Institute to a great degree. I think it's relevant today. I kind of mentioned what I used it for coming into the job, but Kendall Card and Mike Rogers not all that long ago wrote an article about how we would deal with intrusions, how we deal with cyber and manipulating and moving in the cyber domain. Well, little did he know, it wasn't all that much later when we had an intrusion in our Navy Marine Corps intranet. And you go back and you listen to Mike Rogers tell the story of that awful period that he went through, and we learned a lot. And that kind of laid out how, you know, by writing that down, by walking themselves through that, Kendall and Mike, that kind of laid out how we were going to do things in the future. Jim Amos and I sat down and said, how are we going to work together to integrate the Navy Marine Corps? So we carefully laid it out there in an article that Jim and I said, let's use proceedings. Now I'm thinking like all of you, well, when the Commandant speaks, the Marine Corps is going to get right in line. When the CNO lays it out, the debate begins. But I found that all of my tribes, the Jim Amos has tribes as well. Now he is an aviator, so there's an issue there that the Marine Corps has. But we're working, we've used the proceedings, and that has helped us. Not only, we write our thoughts down with our people, but we take that to our folks, to our executives, and lay that out, and we've used that to a great degree. A kid, Colonel Boyle, wrote some criticisms on air-sea battle recently, an article I picked up, read that, and he said, this guy's got a good idea. It is kind of crazy. Why are we calling it air-sea battle? Because when you get into the details, there really isn't a battle per se involved, and when we put all this thing together, and I see some of you were still working there whenever Bruce Klingen and Breedlove, two guys over there in Europe, were putting this thing together. But the point would be, I sat down with this kid and had lunch, took it down there, and we had the four service chiefs, actually. Odierno and I got together with Welsh and Jim Amos, and we're going to change this thing. And it's based on a kid sitting down and writing it in there. Better ideas, clear thought, and using proceedings and all that you guys bring to that. So it's been a crossroads of ideas for young officers to come in and write things. Rickover did it, King did it, Nimitz did it, and they started doing it as a lieutenant. So I want to talk just a tad again about innovation and taking kind of a page. You provide the means of innovation of thought. So using kind of that concept and talk to some people, I created this thing called the CNO's Rapid Innovation Cell. Well, that's a great way to have nothing happen, right? But I kept it out of the building and I took it down to Norfolk. 15 JOs. And actually, John Cowell, the guy that writes books on innovation, he talked to me a little bit about it. He said, don't give them any money or they'll build a bureaucracy. And I said, boy, that's a little late to know that. But so we didn't. We gave them like $3 million, 15 JOs. We're on our second set. And these guys, I call them the maniacs, they went crazy, finding how to do things more cheaply. They got a 3D printer on a ship. I've been trying to get between the Loggies, my N4, NavSup, and all this, to get a 3D printer on the ship. These kids have it out there on the Essex, and they're going great guns, making little surgical things, not scalpels or any of that, but you get my point. Little things to save money here and there, gas caps, all kind of stuff that you can imagine would be more than you would expect. I got a kid a lieutenant put together a way to test our cyber vulnerability, and I really can't go into the classification of it, but it's eye-watering, and Mike Rogers grabbed it, and Jan Tighe got it, and we're going to run this, and it's a really, really good work. Just a bunch of lieutenants. So we're in our second group of that, running things quickly through people and into the fleet using innovation. So technology-wise, thinking of innovation, you got technology, process, and concepts. I think technology-wise, thinking of innovation in the Navy, we're pretty good. And I think we're actually on a little bit of probation there down at OSD because we've been running things out to the fleet with not a heck of a lot of tremendous support. I don't really worry about that. I just want to see if this thing works. If it doesn't work, throw it back in the can. We'll put it back in R&D a while. But we're going to take a laser out. Many of you may know that. We're taking a directed energy laser. We're going to put it on the Ponce, a brand new system on a 50-some-year-old ship and take it out to the Gulf. It works. Some of you have seen the video. If you haven't, it's out there on YouTube somewhere. We can get it for you, and it has already demonstrated to shoot down a low, slow flyer and a speedboat. So we'll put that out there. That's good. We're going to take the rail gun, the proverbial rail gun maybe you thought about, and we're going to put it on a high-speed vessel, a joint high-speed vessel, that catamaran. Rachel, if you have it, put it up there if you got the slides out there. And we've had NAVSEA do the engineering piece, so there it is, to put this thing out there. We're going to do it in 16. In fact, I'm getting POM briefs this week, budget briefs, and the funding's in place. And a couple of things I draw to your attention up there. I don't know if I have a point or not, doesn't matter. $25,000 per round. Any of our missiles, our cheapest missile, is just under $1 million. Is that?
Yes, sir. Red.
Okay, there it is. How about that? It's my fault I asked for it, right? That point is, we're actually going to do this. We're going to, you guys know Brand Farron, some of you know him. He's on the CNO's executive panel. He helps me out, think stuff. And he said, well, you're the third CNO. I'm going to come in and lay this out for you. Why are you can take that down, Rachel. Why are you spending so much time on counter swarm and not doing swarm yourself? I said, I don't know, Brand. It's like everything else. I don't know. Why not? And he said, well, imagine how many small boats loaded with explosives you could buy for the cost of one Arleigh Burke. And imagine how much money you're spending to defend that Arleigh Burke on that. So we've got a lot of small, remote control small boats. We use them for targets, for crying out loud. So we're working that concept here this summer. We're going to go down to the inactive ships down there off the James River outside of Norfolk and run a couple of scenarios, you know, for the Gulf and do it. So we're taking stuff to sea technology-wise. We got a large diameter UUV. We're doing okay with that. There's no shortage of ideas for new processes, but we could use some more. If you want to call a process idea, an innovative idea, I'd say that the Information Dominance Corps and its creation and how that has come together, where we've taken cryptologists whose job is to gather information, intelligence, who take information and sort through it to provide intelligence, to people who understand our networks, to really meteorologists and oceanographers, and pulling them together into a core, people who are focused on the effort and working toward within the cyber domain has been really an idea, an innovation that has carried us a great deal. This is working well. And Mike Rogers taking over up there as Cybercom, I think, is an example of it. And Jan Tai, who's moved right in behind Mike up there, has shown that for the Navy, this has been a great idea. And we are producing cyber warriors who are really showing their mettle in the joint domain. It's working well. There are other ideas, like innovative ideas and processes that I think I could lay out for you, but I think you get the idea. Where we could use some help is innovation of concepts. And what I mean by that is taking what we have and maybe using it better. Taking something like we're working on, the SM-6 missile, which is turning out to be a tremendous surface-to-air missile. High speed, moves fast, great maneuver at the end, performs, it's reliable. It can do other things. It can be used for a whole host of other things that need to go fast, get there, turn, and you can't shoot it down. So in addition to surface-to-air, there are other domains where it can start and go to, and I'll leave it at that with the classification. There's a guy named Roper in OSD who's doing exactly that for us, for looking out in the Western Pacific and a certain set of neighbors out there that we can use conceptual changes with the things that we have. Put a seeker on a different kind of weapon and do that kind of thing and see if that weapon doesn't stand off further and perform more. More of those ideas we could use some help on as we look out into the future. So let me talk a little bit about this thing I called interdependence. But first, we'll continue in the Navy advocating for sea power. It's a job that you know, is mine predominantly, and you help me out on that. And I ask you to continue to do that. It's a relentless job. I got a kid, Donegan, working right now, a two-star admiral on my staff, kid with a bright future, working on how do we continue advocating for sea power and its value? How do we communicate with the folks we need to? If you're a retired 3- or 4-star, you just got some of his work laid out there. And if you're not, and you're here, those of you in the Institute, members and otherwise, you'll see him and some of his work getting out and around as he's worked this with various and sundry people. And I thank you for that work in that regard. But as we look toward the future and we look at our interrelations with other services, as we think about our budgets in the future, I kind of come to this, if not conclusion, thought process. And this gets to where I've been talking to Marty Dempsey. How do we fit in better as a joint force is something that I'm wondering about. As we've gone through these years of wars, we've been good at operating jointly when we need to. But how do we fit in better from really the instigation of the force, the things we buy and the things we need to do? At best, we'll probably be at a sequester level in the future. People can argue and say, well, that's different, things are going to change, this is going to happen, that's going to happen. But right now, sitting the law in the books is sequestration is what we're headed for, and those numbers are going to be tough. I think as a group, as a joint force, we need to look more inward toward each other to deal with this situation. And I'd tell you that left to our own devices, we will look outward to each other when money gets tight. I'd tell you this week, I'm getting these preparations for our next budget, and our guys are coming forward, and we say in this tighter budget, they're saying if it has a J in front of it, it's starting to go above core because it's not inherently Navy. It's not the core we do. And I say I'm not sure that's the right way to do, to pull away from each other. In fact, I'm pretty sure it's not the way to do it. We need to streamline intelligently, and we're doing that. We're working to that in the department. We need to invest wisely. I think we're doing that. We're moving in that direction well. We need to operate innovatively, and I think we're doing that. But I think we also need to look at to be more interdependent on each other, and I think that's going to be tough. I think that's going against what we would normally consider doing. We've been asked to, I think we're being asked to move on in the joint spectrum of operations from deconfliction, that's good. Coordinate, that's good. Integrate with each other, that's good. Operate jointly, that's good, but that's the operational part of it. I think we need to learn better how to build a joint force together, and that's the business in the building that we have to think through again. Strengthen the interfaces that we have between the joint forces. Now, I speak to this audience here, and I haven't spoken much about this. I brought it up at Sea Air Space because in the sea services, in the maritime services, we're not bad at that. We're pretty adept at cultivating partnerships. By going to sea, life at sea causes you to depend on someone else. You learn to trust one another pretty easily. The Navy Marine Corps connection, the Navy Coast Guard connection has been going on for years. For the Marine Corps and the Navy, the Battle of Nassau in 1776 is the first time that we operated together, and we've really been doing it ever since then. With the Coast Guard, we're obviously a natural fit. Today we have law enforcement detachments out on Coast Guard vessels. We have common systems, common sonars, some common radars for sure. The systems that they build, we even use the same shipbuilder. So this is something we're used to. We have a pretty connected and common strategy for the Arctic as we move ahead. And last week it was a Navy Coast Guard operation that rescued that poor sick girl off the ship, off the sailboat there off California. So we have done that in our services. We have been interdependent and joint with other services. In the Air Force, the Doolittle raid, many years ago, we've hung harpoons off B-52s, our mines off B-52s. We're reliant on Air Force tankers. Our aircraft are compatible with Air Force tankers. And today, all the jamming, the joint jamming, if you will, of systems takes place with Navy aircraft. The Air Force depends on us for that. In the Army, we reposition Army equipment. We have pre-positioned ships out there. We still do that, and they depend solely on us for that. Army helicopters still operate off of ships, and if you remember the tanker wars, they did it during the tanker wars of the late 80s. We had Army helicopters, and we took our close-in weapon system, CWIS, and put them on bases out there in Afghanistan to help defeat and defend against rockets in Iraq and also in Afghanistan. So we can do this, but I think as we go forward, it's going to have to be a pretty deliberate approach. It won't be able to be done willy-nilly, and we'll be breaking through some, as I said, some resistance. I think we got to avoid single points of failure. I think one Department of Defense capacity, necking down to that, just won't be acceptable. That's too much risk. Services have to have their own unique capabilities to be developed, to develop their organic, if you will, or unique capability, and I think we need to respect that. But we can stop overspending on similar capabilities. We have a few missiles we're developing that the Air Force is developing, and we don't find that out nearly as soon as we should in that budgeting and programming process. It tends to be caused by OSD making us come together. If it's born joint, and especially if it's a weapon, we don't tend to accept it nearly as much. We just demonstrated something called UCAS. You remember that? That there was an unmanned coming off the aircraft. It was pretty cool. Well, that used to be JUCAS, all right? Then it became Orphan UCAS, and nobody wanted it. And then they said, no, it's Navy UCAS. And we took the N off because we knew we couldn't shake it. And we brought it through, and now it's a great deal. And it's evolved to now what'll be U-class. So there's a lot of success here and a lot of opportunities that I think we need to grab and work out. It's not going to be easy, but in the budgets of the future, I think it's incumbent upon us to take that opportunity. So let me close. I'll be happy to take questions. I want to thank you all for being the innovative thinking institution that you are. You nurture it, you build it, and we're getting great value from it. So I thank you all very much for that. I want to thank the readers, the authors, the board in here for communicating the value of sea power to the nation. It's important, and it's helping us, and I thank you very much for that. Our end state, to remind, is the judicious use of people, money, and time as we collectively think ahead, but certainly those of us in uniform. over 10 years of combat, land wars predominantly, we in the building say we've given so much of an emphasis on combat and competency that we've forgotten about character. And so we're working hard on that. But I'd say we got to look at judiciousness. You know, competency and combat can't continue to stump judiciousness as we look at how we use people, money, and time in the future. We owe it to those that are going to come after us to have not only an effective joint force, but an efficient joint force. So thanks a lot for inviting me. Thanks for listening, and I'd be happy to take any questions you may have.
Yeah. We have mics at each end. We can pass the mic down if you have a question.
Gordon.
It appears to me the military is shrinking, but the civilian workforce not shrinking much. I know there's some plans to, but I mean, I believe it's now almost 800,000. It's over 200,000 Navy. I mean, every single department's grown in civilian workforce, yet while it's been growing across the DOD, literally every state government, city government, county, companies have all gotten more efficient, innovating, using your term.
Yeah.
I mean, it looks to me like, why do we keep shrinking the military and we keep growing the civilian workforce? I just don't understand that. It looks to me like we're going in the wrong direction.
Spoken like somebody who set this all up, right? To be serious, though, we have in our budgets now, as a result of some direction we had before, a headquarter reduction. The predominance of that reduction will be civilians and contractors. So I can't tell you the precise mix, but we in the Navy have not many military, and my check on the other guys as we're coming through here into this summer, that we still have a problem that hasn't been resolved, which is we are not allowed to put together, if you will, a strategic plan for the management of civilians. It gets distributed, and it has to be done locally. So that remains within those regulations. We've taken that to the Hill and said, you know, we want to continue to size this civilian workforce, but we need a lift on these regulations to preclude RIFs. You know, that RIF process is so long. The processes that redistribute people, so you really can't get them off the rolls. And it also precludes us from managing our civilian workforce, especially in the Navy. As you know, a lot of our civilians are in depots, they're in shipyards. Many are engineers that we need. They're down there at the Navy Yard creating the sea power for the future. But then there are a lot of other support that we say, hey, we need to be able to shape this like we shape the military. I would tell you, until we can do that, we are totally going to be sub-optimized in this, and we're going to totally be hamstrung to get the spectrum, you know, that we need of experience across there. We have, yes sir, I understand that. We have this in a congressional, what am I looking for? A congressional proposal, if you will. You know, we submit those up there, that we get lifted these and allowed to provide a civilian workforce plan, if you will, to show the difference between current regulations and lift the regulations on our ability to strategically manage the civilian workforce. But to answer your question, it's coming down, but it's just coming down as part of an overall headquarter reduction. It's not targeted, and it doesn't have a strategic element to it due to the limitations we have. Yeah, Timbo?
Hi, John. When we lived across the street from each other in Halsey, in Yokosuka, things were just fine in the Pacific. I don't know what's happened since we left.
Seemed to be.
We'd be interested in your views on stealth. Zumwalt just commissioned F-35 coming sometime, and you mentioned that the airborne electronic jamming capability that's resident in your service. Could you give us your view on stealth? Is it a perishable quality? Some in the room may think it's overrated to begin with. Thanks.
Yeah. Well, my opinion, spoken by a nuclear submariner on stealth, is that. But I've gone to, maybe that's a good thing, because I said, how does this work? It has the F-35 and all that it brings in stealth has a future in our air wing in the future. It has an important part of the air wing. It is hard to detect, and for certain bands of radars and if you will, radio frequency emissions out there. Stealth will get you through there. But I think in generations ahead, in 10 years or so, there are the means to detect things. Until you stop putting heat out, you know, until you stop moving through the air and you can be seen, and until you don't, if a field is put up, you don't perturbate a field that can then be turned into, with a certain semblance of activity turned into a detection, then, you know, stealth just won't be perfect. But it's needed for what we have for the future, for at least 10 years out there, and there's other magic about that, you know, decade. But I think we need to look beyond that. So to me, I think it's a combination of having aircraft that have stealth, but also aircraft that can suppress other forms of radio frequency, electromagnetic emissions so that we can get in. I don't know that we're in the future. In fact, I doubt in the future we can just suppress everything, go rolling in until we do what we need to do and get out. But we have the means for the way out in the future with the next generation jammer and what it'll bring to be able to get in when we need to and get out. As far as the ship, I think I'm pretty excited about that, especially for what that could bring to the Western Pacific. There's a picture, go ahead Rachel, if you have that picture of, if, you know, you see the tug next to the, that's the Zumwalt, and there's got to be better pictures now because she was commissioned. I'm still waiting. But it will look on, that big ship, 600 feet, will look on radar like that tug. And so that's kind of just a, it's not perfect, but you get the idea. And if you've been out and around the Western Pacific where visibility is lousy a lot of the time, you have a situation here on a vessel. Now, acoustically, it's very similar. My point being the relative detectability acoustically is similar. You can't hear this thing very well if you're a submarine. So I think if we can continue developing that, that's a big deal. I don't know about the cost payback for something like this. We'll see. But the capability is amazing. Yes, sir. Oh, hey, yeah. Hey, great to see you here. How did I do? Did I describe you well?
Perfect, sir. Yes,
All right, thanks.
absolutely. Anytime detailers come in and talk to us about billeting and stuff like that, it seems like there's more and more pressure for shoreside sailors to get back to sea, even talking about cutting shore tours by 6 months, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
We have less ships now than we did when I came in 8 years ago. So where's the pressure to get sailors to go back to sea coming from when we should have theoretically less billets for them at sea?
Well, the pressure is becoming in the skill sets that we need people to be in, particularly in supervisory right around E6. We have a paucity, and so we're trying to cover down on the gaps at sea. When we've taken a broad look at that, we said, all right, what is our center of gravity in personnel management, meaning sea duty or shore duty? And it rarely turned to shore duty. That is how our Navy Personnel Command, the detailers were doing it. And talking to Admiral Moran, and I convinced myself we need to flip-flop that. So we did a couple of things. One, we are going to ask some people in certain skill sets to leave shore duty early and predominantly to go to school, so that by the time they arrive on that sea command, they've gotten the school and therefore the NEC that they may need. That's really the issue we're trying to solve. The way it gets articulated, you know, in papers or otherwise could be different. But that's the issue we're trying to find. Supervisory predominantly, high skill set, get them schooled before they return to sea so that we can fill those gaps. To help recognize that, as you probably know, we've increased sea pay, and that took effect Monday. So if you're in a sea duty billet, your 15 May, you know, paycheck will show that. So that's sea pay and sea pay premium, and we're working very hard to get pushed through something that acknowledges high deployment allowance. There's already a law on the book that says that if you go over a certain amount of days, it's 190 days at sea, you are owed a high deployment allowance. That was waived after 9/11. We believe that in the Navy that we ought to consider removing, so we want to waive a waiver and pay that. Marine Corps is on board with us on that to again acknowledge sea tours and to compensate sea duty if you have that deployment duty. But that's the deal. That's who we're trying to get back to sea. We're only considering, frankly, 2% of those, you know, sea duty billets that we're kind of looking at, if you know what I mean, to move back to sea. And you're probably thinking, yeah, well, how come it's the 2% that I know, right? Yes, sir.
Go from the front. Go from the front. You go, Matt.
On the topic of innovation, you've set up the CRIC. The Navy's shown an ability to experiment, but from mil-spec to drawings to instructions, institutionally, if it's not a flagship experimental project, we've prevented ourselves from making that a day-to-day part of our culture. And I think the RAD was part of that attempt. How do you see the Navy changing in such a way that the experiments that come from the CNO's Rapid Innovation Cell could be a ship's Rapid Innovation Cell, or just a sailor's wild idea cell on a daily basis where we can integrate that deck plate innovation on a day-to-day basis?
Well, the wild idea cell, after you earn your warfare pin and you get all that done, I'm all for it. But in all seriousness, I want to see what we can do with the CRIC. So you're familiar with the CRIC. You may even be on it. I don't know. When we take these and we bring these to fruition, they will go into something that we call the speed to fleet. And what that is, back at headquarters, we put money in that and it gets micromanaged, if you will, all the way through until we get a critical mass of them. And then if it's good, we adopt it as a program of record and it gets support, it gets training and all that. How we can continue to, I got to put together the end-to-end, if that makes sense, Lieutenant Hipple, and then we can speed it up. And that's the way I want to do it right now. To throw seeds out and hope a million wildflowers grow, first of all, I'll leave and I can't be sure that'll go anywhere. So I'm trying to put in place a process, born in and bought in by a bureaucracy up there that will carry after me, and then we can go end to end. And I would tell you, like 3D printing, that's working out pretty well. We put a missile on PCs that work today, that SOCOM had. That came from an idea from guys on the PCs out there. So how come we can't have a missile like the SEALs have, and we put that on there? So I'm saying we can do it. We just got to continue to listen and put an end-to-end process in that can work.
Other questions?
Yes, sir.
I believe ASWs are dominant, and I think you'll agree with me, sir. Given the proliferation of air-independent propulsion platforms in the Western Pacific and the increased capabilities of our near-peer competitors in the field of ASW, how do you see, sir, our continuing dominance in that field, not just in platforms like submarines and aircraft, but also in training?
What was the last one? Training? Yeah. Well, first we got to have, as you said, the right platforms. We do. I just took a couple of patrol debriefs. One was on a sub that is 30 years old, and they went front line and they did a great job. So I was really encouraged by that. The P-8's doing great out there, right? And it is exceeding its design specs for ASW and otherwise. We've got to bring UUVs, unmanned underwater vehicles, in, and we got to bring large diameter. That's about 6 feet or more. And we've got to have one of these on patrol, operating autonomously somewhere. You can probably imagine where we'd put it first so that we can make sure it works by the end of the decade for sure. To augment then the subs, we won't build enough subs to get to the places that we need to get. They're too expensive, and it would be silly to send manned 150, 130 person things out when we can send an autonomous thing that is networked to something on the bottom. We're getting good return now from our fixed systems that we have out there due to technology. So it's a network that has to continue to draw in. We've got to pull the information out of that and get it to a central headquarters, a theater ASW command. So we're doing pretty good in the Western Pacific, doing that, and then bringing in allies, particularly certain high-end allies out there. And now the training part is something we've just got to focus on. Good news is in the surface community, what we've done is we started co-locating surface P3 and sub people in one site for kind of standard ASW training. And we're getting some payback on that. It's a little bit within the service, getting interdependence, you know what I mean, on a warfare area among that. But we got to find the time to do the training out there. So I just got to grind my way through that. Admiral Gortney's got it. He understands it. Your air boss has got it, and so does Copeman, the surface boss. It's the way the submariners live. So anyway, we keep plugging. You are right. We own it now, the undersea domain, and we've got to continue to work on it so we never lose it.
Questions?
Yes, sir, in the back.
Up among some of the midshipmen, and that is de-skilling, the increased reliance on automation. It's really stunning. You can see it happening with each passing year. I was the chair of the admissions board as well. Is there a concern with you that if we eventually confronted with a peer cyber power, someone who can hack our stuff as well as we can hack ours, that when the nets go down, that perhaps your generation will be the one that could better navigate without GPS?
At least give us 5
Yeah,
minutes.
you know, it's a classic, and again, being from the Naval Academy, I asked the question, do you guys still do celestial navigation? And yeah, I got this blank. Right? I believe we got to go back to that. I'm serious. Every system that is going to survive, and all the ones that are good, they use celestial navigation and by some means, right? And you know, within the classification of this. That and bottom contour, we've got to go back to those, you know, Dutton and all that stuff. Yes, I do. I do worry about that. We develop for communication survivability. We're looking at HF very hard. The old high frequency means to be able to relay. Now that's not going to get you the broad area that you need, and it won't replace what you had. But we're talking about simple survivability in a communication constrained, you know, environment.
Okay.
Yeah, David.
Go all the way.
Yeah.
Thank you, General. A former student who clearly has. That's right. That's right. One of my earliest Naval War College students. That's another point, sir. When you took office as CNO, you emphasized warfighting. You emphasized readiness. 2.5 years later, how do you think that's gone?
We are making, the question is, how are we doing in readiness? I'm satisfied. I've had a great 2 fleet forces guys who have grasped this and fiddled with the process, if you will, the system, which is the fleet response training plan to do that. John Harvey and Bill Gortney. So I am satisfied with that. I think for the money that we have and the money we've put into the amount of ready units that we've put out there and how they've performed, I think has been extraordinary. We got warts, we've got gaps at sea, and how we manage it. And it starts with manning. We've got to get the manning right. We can work the rest. So that's the one that I'm a little impatient, but Bill Moran's making great headway with this, and we're getting support. We are making, some of you, if you're a surface warfare officer, you remember, my God, the struggle because we just didn't do the maintenance. We just allowed that to atrophy. Our in-serve scores are consistently creeping up in a consistent manner. The kids know more about how to take care of the ships, how to do the maintenance. We are sending more people ashore to regional maintenance centers so they can repair and then go back to their ship. How much more? About 2,000 over 3 or 4 years. You can't do it overnight. So we got a lot of work to do. But yeah, I'm satisfied with that. But I got to tell you, David, there is great pressure. I bring it on myself to want to sacrifice that readiness and give a little bit more, and you hollow it out and hold on to force structure. And that's a big conundrum of the future, to go ahead and retire more or not, you know, retire more to maintain it. So that's why we came up with this cruiser mod thing. And we want to hold on to these things, put them into a longer term modernization. And that's to hold the money to operate and continue with the readiness.
Okay, I think we're going to cut it there so you know, and just, we know your time is very precious, and we thank you today for your time to come here and share your thoughts with us.
Something for the flight?
Sir, this is, I hope it's a big airplane. Thank you.
Thank
Combat
you very
fleet,
much.
sir.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Thank you all very much.